Welcome back to Rare CoinX PRO. Today we are telling the story of 4 Lincoln Wheat Pennies through a lens that most collectors have never fully considered, a single invisible line drawn across the history of the American cent that divides everything that came before it from everything that came after it. That line runs right through the middle of the 1940s, and our 4 coins today, the 1944 D, the 1945 no mint mark, the 1946 D, and the 1948 no mint mark, each stand at a specific and historically significant position relative to that line. Some are on the wartime side. Some are on the peacetime side. And understanding exactly where each coin sits, what it is made of, why it is made of that material, and what that material tells you about the moment in American history when it was struck, is the key to unlocking the true collector's significance of every single one of today's coins. Stay with us all the way through because every section of today's video reveals something genuinely new, and our final coin carries the most historically satisfying compositional story of all 4. Let's start with our first coin, the 1944 D Lincoln Wheat Penny. The invisible line in the history of the American cent runs through the year 1943, and to understand the 1944 D penny, you need to understand what that line meant. On one side of the line, everything before 1943, the Lincoln cent was made of traditional bronze, 95% copper, 5% tin, and zinc. On the other side, 1943, the Lincoln cent was made of zinc-coated steel. And then in 1944, the mint crossed back toward the copper side of the line, but not all the way back. Not yet. The 1944 to 1946 shell case pennies used brass, 95% copper, 5% zinc, because the recycled ammunition casings they were made from contained no tin. The source of that copper is what makes the 1944 D penny one of the most historically remarkable coins in the entire Lincoln cent series. In 1943, the mint produced steel cents with a zinc coating because of critical copper shortages for military needs, shell casings, wiring, ammunition. From 1944 to 1946, production returned to copper alloy, but composition changed. Instead of pre-war bronze, shell case alloy was used, 95% copper and 5% zinc without tin. The brass of the 1944 D penny came from recycled military ammunition shell casings. The spent brass of wartime America melted down and reborn as pocket change. Every 1944 D cent you hold was literally made from the same metal as the ammunition that fought World War II. That is not a metaphor. That is the actual, physical, chemical story of what the coin in your hand is made of. The Denver Mint struck 430,578,000 pennies with the D Mint mark in 1944. A PCGS MS67 red 1944 D sold for approximately $2,160 at heritage auctions. MS68 full red specimens have reached $9,300. Each grade step at the top commands a massive jump. The era landscape of the 1944 D is where the most extraordinary value in this coin story is hiding. The 1944 D/S overmint mark leads the pack. The finest known MS67 Plus RD sold for $8,400 in August 2019, and a May 2025 NGC MS66 RD example listed for $28,988.78. This extraordinary D over S variety was created when 2 working dies carrying San Francisco S mint marks were shipped to Denver, where workers punched a D right over the existing S. Under magnification, you can still see curved portions of the S extending beyond the edges of the D. And then there is the steel cent error. Approximately 7 Denver examples are known struck on leftover 1943 zinc-plated steel planchets. The Denver MS63 realized $115,000 in 2007. A 1944 D struck on steel, worth $115,000. Made from the wrong metal at the wrong moment. The invisible line expressing itself in the most dramatic possible error form. The shell case alloy makes uniform RD coins scarcer than the population figures imply. True RD coins often develop carbon spots or streaky toning from zinc distribution in the recycled metal. This is a critically important detail that every 1944 D collector needs to understand. The zinc in the shell case brass, derived from the ammunition casings, distributes unevenly through the alloy, creating microscopic variations in composition that cause the copper surface to tone in patches and streaks rather than uniformly. Full red designation on a 1944D cent is therefore harder to achieve and maintain than on a traditional bronze coin, and the premium it commands reflects that genuine additional rarity. The magnet test is the most critical first step with any 1944D. A genuine standard example should show absolutely zero magnetic response. It is 95% copper and non-magnetic. A magnetic 1944 cent weighing approximately 2.70 g instead of the standard 3.11 g may be the rare steel planchet error. The 1944 wheat penny is a key date in coin collecting due to its history and connection to World War II. This appeal to collectors is what we call numismatic value. The invisible line runs right through 1944. The coin is on the near side of the wartime boundary, made from the metal of the war itself, and the error story adds extraordinary specialist excitement on top of that foundational historical appeal. Standard circulated examples are worth 5 cents to 30 cents. MS-68 full red specimens have reached $9,300. The 1944D/S overmint mark finest known MS-67 Plus RD sold for $8,400. And a 2025 NGC MS-66 RD example listed for $28,988.78. The 1944 steel cent from Denver realized $115,000 in 2007, while the Philadelphia steel example sold for $180,000 and the 1944 S steel cent set the all-time record at $408,000 in 2021. First, always test with a magnet immediately. Zero response confirms standard shell case brass composition, while magnetic response signals a potential steel cent error worth professional authentication. Second, examine the D mint mark under 10x to 20x magnification, specifically looking for the curve of an S inside or around the D. This identifies the valuable D/S over mint mark variety worth up to $28,988 in MS-66 red. Third, for any suspected steel cent or high-grade OMM, professional authentication is not optional. It is the only path to liquidity. A raw, uncertified 1944 steel cent is essentially unsellable to any serious dealer because the risk of forgery is too high. Fourth, assess color carefully. The uneven zinc distribution in shell case brass makes genuine full red color particularly prized. And fifth, never clean your coins. Now let's move on to our second coin, the 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny, no mint mark. The 1945 no mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny carries what may be the single most emotionally powerful date in the entire Wheat Penny series, because 1945 was the year the war ended. Victory in Europe came in May. Victory over Japan came in August. The most devastating conflict in human history was over, and the pennies struck in Philadelphia that year were produced during the final months of fighting and the extraordinary emotional release of peace. These are the last wartime shell case cents, struck from recycled military ammunition brass. The 1945 Philadelphia cent is the last year of wartime composition at the Philadelphia Mint, the final expression of the invisible line's wartime side before peacetime materials began returning to the cent's alloy. Over 1 billion struck. One sold for $20,400. That is the 1945 Philadelphia penny in a nutshell, one of the most common wheat cents ever made, yet capable of jaw-dropping prices when everything lines up. The Philadelphia Mint produced 1,040,515,000 no mint mark pennies in 1945, over 1 billion coins. The $20,400 Philadelphia MS-67 Plus RD that sold at Heritage Auctions in 2022 came from a mintage of over 1 billion coins. For the 1945 no mint mark in red, PCGS has certified just 142 coins at MS-67 and only 18 at MS-67 Plus. 142 coins at MS-67 red from over 1 billion minted. 18 at MS-67 Plus. The invisible line between abundance and scarcity runs right through the condition grading spectrum. Below MS-65, the 1945 Philadelphia cent is one of the most common wheat pennies in existence. Above MS-67 red, It is a genuinely rare and precious numismatic object. The composition story adds the wartime shell case dimension that gives the 1945 coin its specific material identity. This enormous production volume, combined with wartime production pressures and the new shell case alloy, 95% copper, 5% zinc, being processed through mint machinery adapted for a different bronze composition, created the conditions for a distinctive set of errors and varieties. Lamination errors, caused by impurities in the recycled shell case brass, appear more frequently on 1944 to 1946 cents than on any other wheat penny years, and finding one on a 1945 Philadelphia cent adds both specimen interest and meaningful premium value. The 1945 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny is composed of shell case brass, 95% copper and 5% zinc, no tin, at 3.11 grams and 19 millimeters. MS-68 record, $20,400 at Heritage Auctions in 2022. PCGS value guides span 6 cents to $11,520, showing how much grade and color matter. The uneven zinc distribution of the shell case alloy creates the same toning vulnerability as the 1944 genuine full red color on a 1945 Philadelphia cent is harder to maintain than on a traditional bronze coin, and the red designation commands a proportionally stronger premium. The 1945 Lincoln cent market is defined by a steep value incline based on grade and color designation. Circulated examples are worth very little, often just their melt value. Value climbs exponentially for coins graded MS-67 red and higher. The victory year emotional context, the coin of the year the war ended, made from the brass of the war itself, resonates across every collector community and generation. The last wartime shell case composition status gives the 1945 Philadelphia cent a natural closing chapter appeal on the wartime side of the invisible line. A 1945 wheat penny value is usually about 5 cents to $2 in circulated condition in 2026. Uncirculated examples typically range from about $10 to $25 plus. The 1945 MS-68 RD record is $20,400 at Heritage Auctions in 2022. The 1945 DMS-68 RD fetched $14,400 at Heritage Auctions in January 2019. In MS-67 Red, examples command between $115 and $138. For error coins, the 1945 DDR MS-67 record stands at $3,819 at Heritage Auctions. First, always look for lamination errors on the surface of the 1945 Philadelphia cent. The recycled shell case brass creates distinctive peeling or bubbling surface flaws that are more common on 1944 to 1946 cents than on any other wheat penny years, and confirmed lamination errors add meaningful premium. Second, assess color carefully in natural daylight. The uneven zinc distribution of shell case brass means genuine full red color is particularly rare on this date. Third, examine Liberty and En God We Trust under magnification for any doubling that indicates a genuine DDO variety. Fourth, reflect on the victory year significance when presenting or selling this coin. The 1945 Philadelphia cent is the last wartime composition penny from Philadelphia, made from the brass of the war in the year that war ended. And fifth, for any example grading MS-65 RD or higher, professional PCGS or NGC certification is essential. Next, let's take a look at our third coin, the 1946 D Lincoln Wheat Penny. The 1946 D Lincoln Wheat Penny is the final coin on the wartime side of the invisible line, and that closing chapter status gives it a specific and historically significant collector identity that is completely independent of its mintage, its grade, or any particular variety. The 1946 Lincoln Wheat Penny is the first fully post-war U.S. coin, struck from 95% copper and 5% zinc, shell case alloy, featuring Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and 2 wheat stalks on the reverse, with a total mintage of 1.5 billion pieces. The 1946 coin symbolizes America's transition from wartime to peacetime economy. The 1946 D is the last Denver minted cent to carry the shell case brass composition, The final year that spent military ammunition became the medal of everyday American pocket change in Denver. From 1947 onwards, post-war supply chains had stabilized enough to bring back the original bronze recipe of 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. That tin restoration continued through the end of the Wheat Cent series in 1958. So 1947 is the exact dividing line between the shell case era and the return to true bronze. The 1946 D sits on the last edge of the wartime composition world, the final Denver expression of a material story that began in 1944 when the mint started melting shell casings into pennies. The Denver Mint struck 315,690,000 pennies with the D Mint mark in 1946. The 1946 DMS 67 Plus RD brought $3,120 at Heritage Auctions in January 2025, the freshest top-tier result. In circulated condition, worth pennies, but in MS 67 RD reaches $600. PCGS population of 20 to 30 specimens. 20 to 30 specimens at MS 67 read from over 315 million minted. The invisible line between abundance and scarcity running through the condition spectrum with its full and dramatic force. The error landscape adds specialist excitement. The rare 1946 S/D over mint mark of S 511 can sell for $3,000 plus, and a wrong planchet error once fetched $14,950. For the 1946 D specifically, the repunched mint mark variety, where a secondary D impression is visible slightly offset from the primary, commands premiums from $60 in MS64 red to $280 in MS67 at these shell case cents. Struck from 1944 through 1946, used 95% copper and 5% zinc, but no tin. That missing tin gave freshly struck coins a slightly yellower look compared to the pre-war bronze cents. That subtle yellower tone, the visual signature of the shell case brass alloy, is one of the details that experienced collectors learn to recognize when they handle 1944 to 1946 cents alongside pre-war and post-1946 examples. The 1946 D is the last year this distinctive slightly yellower shell case character appears on a Denver minted Lincoln cent, and that visual distinctiveness is a closing chapter detail that portrait era and material era collectors both appreciate. The 1946 coin symbolizes America's transition from wartime to peacetime economy. The last Denver shell case composition status drives consistent collector interest from multiple communities simultaneously. Closing chapter collectors, material era specialists, and date-run builders all find the 1946 D natural and compelling target. If you've got a 1946 D in MS 65 or better with full original red color, it is worth getting it slapped. The condition rarity at the top grades, PCGS population of only 20 to 30 specimens at MS 67 red from 315 million minted, gives the 1946 D a genuine scarcity dimension that makes the investment in professional grading entirely worthwhile. For pristine examples, a 1946 wheat penny value is about 5 cents to 50 cents in circulated condition in 2026. Common uncirculated examples typically range from about $1 to $25 plus. The 1946 DMS 67 Plus RD brought $3,120 at Heritage Auctions in January 2025. The 1946 S all-time record stands at $16,800 for an MS 67 Plus RD at Heritage Auctions in December 2022, demonstrating the premium that the finest known examples across the entire 1946 series command from specialist collectors. 4 error coins. The S/D over mint mark FS 511 can fetch $3,000 plus, and a wrong planchet error fetch $14,950. First, always lead with the last Denver shell case composition narrative when presenting the 1946 D. This is the final year that spent military ammunition brass was used at the Denver Mint. The closing chapter of the wartime material story on the invisible line, and that historical closure resonates with every collector who understands the composition arc of the 1944 to 1946 years. Second, examine the D mint mark under 10x magnification for any repunched mint mark variety where a secondary D impression is visible offset from the primary. Third, Look carefully at the color of the surfaces. The slightly yellower tone of shell case brass compared to traditional bronze is a visual detail that rewards educated eyes and that confirms the wartime-era material identity of this coin. Fourth, cherry-pick the strike quality when selecting 1946D examples for your collection. Denver strikes from this year vary significantly, and a fully struck sharp example is worth the extra patience. And fifth, for any example in MS65RD or above, professional PCGS or NGC certification is strongly recommended. And now, let's take a look at our fourth and final coin, the 1948 Lincoln Wheat Penny, no mint mark. Our final coin today is the most satisfying of all four from a compositional history perspective, because the 1948 no mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny stands on the peace dime side of the invisible line with its full traditional bronze composition restored, and that restoration tells you that the wartime material story is definitively over. By 1947, post-war supply chains had stabilized enough to bring back the original bronze recipe of 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. That tin restoration continued through the end of the wheat cent series in 1958. The 1948 Philadelphia cent therefore represents the fully normalized, peacetime composition Lincoln cent, traditional bronze restored, the shell case era firmly behind it. America's penny looking forward into the post-war prosperity of the late 1940s and 1950s rather than backward at the wartime years it had just emerged from. An MS65RD example might sell for $22 to $190, while an MS67 Plus specimen commands thousands of dollars. Heritage Auctions sold multiple MS67RD examples in April 2023 for $1,260, $1,500, and $1,560. The all-time auction record is $10,350 for an MS67RD at Heritage Auctions, January 3, 2012, while an MS68RD achieved $3,840 at the Philadelphia Mint produced 317,570,000 wheat pennies in 1948, making this the most common variety of the year. The 1948 coin also carries an important historical footnote from a collecting perspective. The 1948 cents started the last decade of the Wheat Penny series, which ended in 1958. The 1948 Philadelphia cent is therefore not just on the peacetime side of the invisible compositional line, it is also at the opening of the final decade of the Wheat Penny's existence. A coin that marks both a beginning, the full restoration of traditional bronze, and a beginning of an ending, the last 10 years of the beloved wheat stock reverse that had graced the American cent since 1909. The variety dimension of the 1948 Philadelphia cent adds further specialist interest. A doubled die obverse variety exists. Look for clear doubling on Liberty and the date under 5x magnification. Philadelphia pennies from 1948 typically have strong strikes with sharp wheat stalks and clear Lincoln details. This strong strike quality makes the 1948 Philadelphia cent a natural target for collectors who appreciate both history and technical excellence in their wheat pennies. The 1948 no mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny is composed of traditional bronze, 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc, at 3.11 grams and 19 millimeters diameter with a plain edge. The return of tin to the alloy after the shell case years of 1944 to 1946 restores the traditional bronze recipe that the Lincoln cent had used since its introduction in 1909. The tin gives the alloy a slightly different character from the shell case brass. A subtly different color when freshly struck, a different toning pattern over decades, and the more uniform composition that makes full red colors slightly more achievable and more maintainable than on the zinc-only shell case coins. The magnet test confirms the non-magnetic character of the traditional bronze composition. Just as with all pre-1943 Lincoln cents, the 1948 Philadelphia penny shows zero magnetic response to any magnet. Heritage Auctions sold multiple MS67RD examples in April 2023 for $1,260, $1,500, and $1,560. The all-time auction record is $10,350 for an MS67RD, while an MS68RD achieved $3,840 840. The collector demand for the 1948 no-mint mark wheat penny is consistent and driven by the compositional restoration story that makes it the most historically satisfying coin in today's video. An average condition 1948 wheat penny sells for 68 cents to $2.33. But an uncirculated high-grade coin is worth at least $150. The last decade of the wheat penny context adds a closing chapter narrative that complements the opening of peacetime normalcy story perfectly. The 1948 coin is simultaneously a coin of restored tradition and a coin at the beginning of an ending, and that dual narrative resonates with collectors who appreciate the broader historical arc of the Lincoln cent series. The strong strike quality of Philadelphia 1948 cents, better than many other years in the late era series, also drives collector appreciation, as finding a fully struck MS-65 red or higher example with sharp wheat stalks and crisp Lincoln portrait details is a genuinely rewarding collecting achievement. The 1948 no-mint mark wheat penny from Philadelphia typically sells for 5 cents to 20 cents in circulated condition and $2 to $5 in lower uncirculated grades. The real value emerges in gem condition with original red color. In MS-65 RD, examples command $22 to $190. The all-time auction record is $10,350 for an MS-67 RD at Heritage Auctions, January 3, 2012, while an MS-68 RD achieved $3,840. Denver MS-67 Plus RD achieved $3,600 at Heritage in January 2025. According to PCGS, a pristine MS-67 Plus RD specimen fetched over $6,000 at Heritage Auctions. For the doubled die obverse variety, premiums above standard values apply in any grade where the doubling is clearly visible under magnification. First, always lead with the compositional restoration story when presenting the 1948 Philadelphia cent. This is the coin where traditional bronze came back, where tin returned to the alloy after the shell case years, and where the Lincoln cent finally stepped fully off the wartime side of the invisible line and onto the peacetime side with its original recipe restored. Second, appreciate and communicate the strong strike quality that characterizes Philadelphia 1948 cents. The sharp wheat stalks and crisp Lincoln portrait details are measurably better than many neighboring years, and finding a fully struck gem red example rewards the effort of careful searching. Third, examine Liberty and the date under 5x magnification for the doubled die obverse variety. Genuine hub doubling shows raised rounded secondary elements consistently across multiple letters. Fourth, assess color carefully. The return of tin to the traditional bronze alloy makes full red color slightly more achievable than on the shell case coins, and a 1948 Philadelphia cent with genuine MS-67 red color is a premium piece worthy of celebration. Fifth, never clean your coins. And sixth, for any example grading MS-65 RD or higher, or any confirmed double die, professional PCGS or NGC certification is strongly recommended. The grade and color documentation are the foundation of value for any premium 1948 Philadelphia cent. As we have seen today, these 4 Lincoln wheat pennies tell the complete story of the invisible line that divided wartime and peacetime American coinage, and every one of them carries a specific and historically precise position on that line that makes it uniquely meaningful as a collector piece. The 1944 D stands at the beginning of the wartime recovery, literally made from the brass of spent military shell casings, carrying the extraordinary D over S over mint mark error worth up to $28,988 and hiding within its production one of the rarest coins in American numismatics. The steel cent struck on a leftover 1943 planchet that sold for $115,000 in 2007. The 1945 no-mint mark Philadelphia cent is the Victory Year coin, the last wartime composition issue from Philadelphia, struck from shell case brass in the year the war ended, with just 18 examples ever certified at MS-67 Plus red from over 1 billion minted, and a top auction record of $20,400 for a coin produced by the trainload. The 1946 D is the final Denver expression of the shell case era, the last time that wartime ammunition brass became a Denver minted Lincoln cent. With only 20 to 30 PCGS certified examples at MS67 red from 315 million minted, and a 2025 auction record of $3,120 for the finest known Denver example. And the 1948 no-mint mark Philadelphia cent closes our journey on the Peace Dimes side of the invisible line. Traditional bronze fully restored, tin back in the alloy after the shell case years, strong Philadelphia strike quality at its finest, and an all-time auction record of $10,350 for an MS67 red from the first year of the Lincoln Cent's final decade. Whether you are just beginning your coin collecting journey or you have been collecting for years, always check your old coin jars, your inherited collections, and your family's forgotten pennies, because you never know when you might discover a hidden treasure. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another exciting coin video from Rare CoinX PRO. Share this video with your fellow collectors and we will see you in the next one. Happy collecting!